In Ambulance, every second is a fight with death inside a speeding ambulance carrying a critically wounded police officer. Behind the wheel are two bank robbers who aren't even sure they'll make it out alive. Outside, the entire city of Los Angeles is in pursuit. Police cruisers, SWAT units, snipers, and helicopters locking down every possible escape. The twist? One of the fugitives isn't a career criminal at all, but a former United States Marine Corps veteran who stepped into this nightmare to save his seriously ill wife. The story kicks off with Will, an ex-Marine desperately calling insurance companies to secure a loan, only to be brushed off and hung up on. His wife has been battling cancer for years and now needs an experimental surgery with no guarantee of survival, making banks and insurers unwilling to take the risk. The financial pressure is crushing him, but he hides the fear and promises her he'll figure something out. After discussing a job interview, he heads out. Meanwhile, we meet Cam, a sharp and fearless EMT whose job is racing ambulances to emergency scenes. Alongside her partner Scott, she rescues a severely injured child from a brutal road accident and rushes the patient to the hospital. When their shift finally ends, Cam asks Scott to grab a drink, unaware her longest night is just getting started. Meanwhile, Will tracks down his brother Danny. They are not biologically related. Will's father adopted Danny when they were kids, but they grew up inseparable. The irony is their father was a major criminal, and Danny followed the same path which never sat right with Will and slowly drove a wedge between them. Still, the bond never really broke, so when life corners him, Will turns to Danny. After some small talk and memories, Will finally opens up. His wife's surgery will cost $231,000. Danny counters with a wild proposition. What if he could make a lot more? Right then, crew members walk in loading weapons, and it becomes clear Danny already has a plan in motion. Rob a federal bank for $32 million, and he needs a skilled driver. Will is furious at first, but Danny presses the emotional angle. After everything Will sacrificed for his country, what did he get? Isn't it time to fight for family? Torn but desperate, Will agrees. The crew rolls out in a van, reaches the bank without incident, parks in the basement, storms inside, and takes control within minutes. Employees are held at gunpoint as cash gets stuffed into bags. At the same time, LAPD officer Jack and his partner Mark are heading to that very bank for a lighter reason. Jack has a crush on a teller named Kim who works there. Bad timing doesn't begin to cover it. Jack leaves Mark outside and walks up to the bank entrance, only to find the doors locked. Moments later, Danny steps out posing as the bank manager. Thinking fast, Jack makes up an excuse. He says he wants to open an account. Danny tries to brush him off, claiming they're tied up with internal transfers and asking him to return in 20 minutes. But Jack keeps insisting, and refusing him now would look suspicious, so Danny reluctantly lets him in. Once inside, Jack casually asks for Kim's last name since he's there to propose to her. The problem? Danny has no clue. He's a fake manager, so he blurts out a random name. Jack walks over, confesses his feelings, and right then notices the nameplate on her desk doesn't match what Danny said. Kim's face is pale, her eyes glassy with fear, and it clicks instantly. Something is very wrong. Jack reaches for his sidearm, but Danny is faster, locking him down at gunpoint and warning that any move will get everyone in the bank killed. The heist had been running smoothly, but this single slip starts turning the tide. In the vault, cash is still being loaded into bags, while outside another crew member, Randa, pulls up the van to extract the team, until the engine suddenly dies in the middle of the street. As he looks up, a uniformed police officer is standing right in front of him. Just when it seemed the night was darkest, luck favored Randa as the van finally roared to life. Outside the bank, Mark had been growing restless, wondering what his partner Jack was up to, when he suddenly saw Danny holding Jack at gunpoint. He immediately alerted the SIS team, and by coincidence, their headquarters was right next to the bank. As Danny tried to lead his crew out, the SIS opened fire, turning the escape into chaos. Meanwhile, Randa had mistakenly parked the van at the wrong exit, leaving Danny's entire team exposed to a crossfire. Gunshots erupted, and Cam and Scott, hearing the chaos from afar, raced to the scene after receiving the emergency alert. One by one, Danny's men were shot, some killed, some captured, but Danny and Will remained unscathed inside with hostage Jack. Seeing the carnage, Will panicked, realizing just how violently things had spiraled out of control. He confronted Danny, arguing about the madness, and in that instant, Jack lunged at Danny, nearly overpowering him. In the ensuing chaos, Will fired a shot without knowing what to do, striking Jack in the leg and causing a severe, gushing wound. Panic consumed Will as he tried to get Jack out, but Danny insisted there was no time. Forced to leave Jack behind, Will and Danny continued desperate attempts to escape the building, each step more perilous than the last. By now, the bank was completely surrounded. every escape route blocked with no way back inside. Meanwhile, Jack's partner Mark entered the building, saw him under duress and alerted emergency services. Cam and Scott were en route in the ambulance but were initially held back by police amid the chaos outside. When officers learned one of their own was wounded, they cleared the way, allowing the ambulance to reach the bank's basement. Jack was loaded in, and at that moment Danny seized an idea. With no exit from the basement, the ambulance could be their only way out. Brandishing his rifle, he stopped the vehicle, took Scott out of the driver's seat, and forced Will behind the wheel with a $16 million bag while Danny jumped in the back. Cam froze at the sight of the gun, but Danny reassured her, "Do your job, save the officer, and nothing will happen to you." As they made their way out, police appeared, but Danny instructed Cam to speak calmly, emphasizing the injured officer inside. Following his instructions, the police let the ambulance pass, yet Danny had overlooked a critical detail. Scott was still in the basement. Mark found him and learned the two robbers had hijacked the ambulance, turning their escape into an even more dangerous gamble. The moment Mark relays the news to the SIS team, the film dives into its most intense sequence yet. A high-octane chase across Los Angeles like nothing you've ever seen. SIS Captain Monroe arrives with his K-9 unit to take command of the operation. While outside, Mark watches as SIS agents mock Jack, teasing that he's in trouble over his crush. Enraged, Mark charges at them, but Monroe stops him, assuring that Jack will be rescued. Following his orders, the team dispatches helicopters to tail the ambulance. Will spots the chopper overhead and notices Danny panicking. He tells him to stay focused and just drive. Meanwhile, Cam quietly slips to the back of the ambulance and shocks everyone by spraying Danny in the face with a fire extinguisher, attempting to escape. Danny, no amateur, manages to restrain her with his rifle and orders her back, warning against any tricks. Reluctantly, Cam resumes her role, now fully aware that Jack's life hangs in the balance. He's losing blood fast and could die at any moment. With the stakes higher than ever, she pushes forward, forced to keep the mission alive while chaos reigns around them. What follows is the most relentless part of the film, packed with high-octane action and puzzles for viewers to test their wits. Captain Monroe and his SIS team lock onto the ambulance from behind, while a helicopter tracks them overhead using heat vision technology, and police chase them on the streets below. But Will isn't your average driver. He's navigated the deserts of Afghanistan under fire, and he maneuvers the ambulance with precision, slipping through tight gaps and dodging obstacles that would stop ordinary drivers cold. Even with a helicopter overhead, the authorities can't open fire because one of their own is inside. Using this advantage, Will and Danny weave through the city, forcing police cars to crash or give way, turning the pursuit into utter chaos. At one point, when the road ends, Will immediately reverses and takes a side street, keeping the chase unpredictable. Michael Bay's signature drone shots capture the ambulance from every angle, emphasizing just how insane the pursuit is. While driving, Will shares a trick he used in Afghanistan. During army chases, he would deploy decoy vehicles to confuse pursuers and create an escape route. Danny immediately seizes the idea and calls Poppy, his father's old gangster friend, setting the next phase of their plan into motion. Danny hires Poppy for $8 million to park identical ambulances across the city, creating a network of decoys, while another crew member, Castro, is tasked with bringing paint to aid the disguise. But a new crisis emerges. Jack is losing blood at an alarming rate due to the ambulance's reckless speed, and his heartbeat is nearing collapse. Cam directs Danny to perform CPR, and together they revive him, knowing that if Jack dies, they're facing life in prison. He is their living shield. Even after resuscitation, Jack still needs blood, so Will donates his O negative to keep him alive, coordinated by Cam in the back of the speeding vehicle. Meanwhile, SIS Chief Monroe tries to negotiate over the radio, but Danny makes it clear the ambulance won't stop until they escape. SIS refuses to relent, prompting Marco to chase them in a car, yet no one can match Will's driving skills. At one point, Danny loses his temper and attempts to shoot at pursuing police vehicles, but Cam jumps in to stop him. In the chaos, shots are fired inside the ambulance, and Danny drags Cam toward the door, threatening her to maintain control. At the same time, Marco notices Monroe's dog in his car, and the SIS team is forced to retreat immediately because to Monroe, nothing is more important than that dog. With the police and SIS temporarily held back, a new player enters the game, someone who knows Danny far better than anyone else. The city is buzzing with news coverage, and the FBI has taken over the case. Special Agent Anson Clark gathers every piece of intel on the bank robbers and freezes when he hears Danny's name. He immediately goes to Monroe, who initially wants to keep him off the case, but Anson insists, SS has no idea who they're chasing. Danny has been committing heists since he was 17, following in the footsteps of his father, the city's most notorious criminal, and he knows every trick to outsmart law enforcement. Anson recognizes him well. They were college friends, classmates in criminology, though Danny never studied the subject to learn about criminals academically. He studied it to understand how law enforcement tracks them. After just 2 semesters, Danny vanished, putting his knowledge into practice and eventually pulling off 37 successful robberies. Impressed, Monroe allows Anson onto the case. Meanwhile, inside the ambulance, Jack's condition worsens critically. He won't survive until the bullet in his abdomen is removed. Cam urges Danny that the only way to save him now is to get Jack to a hospital immediately. Danny knows that letting Jack die would mean the end for all of them. He is their only shield. So he insists the surgery must happen inside the moving ambulance. Cam protests, reminding him she's just a paramedic, not a surgeon. Thinking fast, Danny calls Cam's ex-boyfriend Colin, who immediately connects her via video call to 2 surgeon colleagues. Will reassures Danny that he can assist Cam, drawing on his battlefield experience treating severely wounded soldiers. They switch seats. Danny takes the wheel while Will moves to the back to help Cam. Imagine the intensity. A paramedic performing major surgery on a moving ambulance, guided only through a video call. Following the surgeon's instructions, Cam makes the incision and begins extracting the bullet, carefully pinching a tiny artery. Jack wakes mid-procedure, screaming in agony because no anesthesia has been given, and the trauma is overwhelming. Will, unable to calm him, resorts to an extreme measure, knocking Jack out with a punch to continue the operation. Just as they resume, the artery tears again and, to make matters worse, the tablet running the video call dies. With only a minute to stop the bleeding, Jack's survival hangs by a thread. Watching all this, Cam panics but quickly regains her composure, clamps the artery and finally stops the bleeding. Jack's life is stabilized. During the surgery, she observes Will and realizes that beneath the criminal act, he's fundamentally a good man forced into this life. She asks him if his wife knows what he's done, and Will is stunned. Cam explains that years of experience have taught her to read people through their expressions. Meanwhile, Monroe, hearing from Colin that Jack might be dead, begins planning a full-force assault, but Anson urges patience, insisting it's not the moment for rash decisions. They call Jack's phone, and to their relief he answers. He's still alive, yet Monroe has already ordered snipers to disable the ambulance. Danny drives the ambulance into the concrete channels of the Los Angeles River, dodging incoming fire while SIS helicopters and heat vision snipers on the expressway open up. Cam screams that if Will dies, everyone dies. Staying low, Will and Danny maneuver the vehicle to avoid the bullets, forcing Monroe to pull back once again. As Danny moves to shoot Cam, she stops him, seizes the moment, and relays to Anson the details of Danny's plan, using the brief scuffle to communicate the critical intelligence. When Anson hears Will's name, he realizes immediately that he's Danny's brother. He contacts Will, urging him to stop now. He was a soldier, and if he surrenders, his sentence will be lighter. But Danny warns that it's a trap, and that he'll face at least 30 years in prison. Hearing this, Will refuses to back down. Anson tells Cam that Will is Danny's weak link. If they can control him, they can end the standoff. Meanwhile, Will's wife calls to share the good news that he's landed the job from his interview, giving him some hope. Danny then executes his most dangerous move yet. Will drives the ambulance to Danny's garage, where Castro is ready with green paint. Under Danny's orders, he sprays the vehicle to block any view inside, while Poppy's crew brings 5 identical ambulances from the hospital parking lot, each painted the same way. After finishing, Danny slips $10,000 to Castro and puts him in one ambulance. Danny had told Will to escape, but Will refuses to leave his brother, sitting back in the driver's seat alongside Danny. Poppy's men drive the remaining 4 ambulances, including his son Robert. When all 6 identical vehicles exit the garage together, the police are completely thrown off, splitting into groups to pursue them. But then, in an unexpected twist, Robert triggers an explosion in his ambulance, killing multiple officers and sending the pursuit into total chaos. At the bridge where police had set up a blockade, Poppy unleashes a remote-controlled car rigged with an automatic machine gun, mowing down everything in its path. Captain Monroe and numerous officers are killed instantly, and the surviving police are thrown into chaos, scrambling to rescue their injured colleagues. Marco is wounded in the attack but spots Robert fleeing and chases him. After a tense pursuit, Marco catches him, but in the struggle, his gun discharges, fatally striking Robert. Seeing his son die, Poppy loses control entirely, consumed by rage. Will is shocked. He never imagined Danny would plan such extreme violence. Following their strategy, the ambulances reach Poppy's hideout, and Danny offers him $8 million, but it isn't enough. Poppy, seeking revenge for his son, wants to kill Jack and Cam, yet Will refuses to abandon them, and Poppy won't let them go either, having seen their hideout. Forced into a corner, Danny prepares to hand over all the money. Will is devastated, believing all their sacrifices for Danny are about to be undone. Then, feigning emotion, Danny signals Will with a subtle gesture. At that exact moment, the brothers open fire together, executing it so perfectly that every gangster in their path drops like birds, the precision and intensity leaving no survivors. Finally, they eliminate Poppy as the firefight reaches its climax. Amid the chaos, Jack regains consciousness and hands a pistol to Cam, who panics and fires, but the shot hits Will. Injured, Will is loaded into the ambulance, pulls bundles of cash from the bag and gives them to Cam, instructing her to deliver it to his wife if he doesn't survive. Danny, desperate to save his brother, drives the ambulance out, but police surround them from every angle, with snipers positioned in buildings and roadblocks set along the streets. Inside, Will is fighting for his life, and Danny, seeing the gun, assumes Jack shot him. Enraged, he moves to shoot Jack, but Cam explains it was her panic that caused the accident, further inflaming Danny's fury. Preparing to fire at Cam, Danny ignores all warnings, but at the critical moment, a shot comes from behind. Will has regained control and fires, stopping Danny. The struggle leaves Danny collapsing to the ground, apologizing to Will in his final moment. Police move in and arrest the wounded Will, but Cam defies Anson's orders to reassure Marco that his partner survived, and it was all thanks to Will. Mark helps load Will into the ambulance as Amy arrives at the scene, screaming in panic. Cam comforts her while quietly placing the bundles of cash Will had given her into Amy's bag. At the hospital, Jack tells Anson that Will saved both hostages' lives, one of them a police officer, meaning Will may escape punishment. Later, Cam checks on the little girl she rescued that morning, and from his hospital bed, Will raises a hand toward Amy standing outside the cabin, softly saying sorry. With that poignant moment, the extraordinary story of the film comes to a close.